And so if you feel that somebody within your organization is struggling with something, remember they're a person. And so if you feel that somebody's changing or somebody's going through or somebody's struggling, take them on one side and just say to them, look, I've noticed some changes in you. Are you okay? Is there anything that we can do for you? Is there anything that I can do for you? Do you want to go for a coffee? Because what you're saying is, I see you. All right? I see you as a person, not as an employee.
So welcome everybody to another episode of the Build Smart Blueprint. Today we are joined by Lee Anderson. Lee is an ambassador of the Lighthouse Charity and also a life coach that really specializes in working with those in the construction industry. Lee's got a lot of experience speaking to both owners, managers and trades all in the construction industry. So I really excellent guest, I think, for us to kind of delve into the space of mental health. Lee is very open about his own experiences, his own challenges when it comes to mental health, challenges around suicide. And I think that puts him in a really great position to talk to us as owners and operators of construction companies of what it's like to kind of be on both ends of the conversation with mental health. So welcome to the podcast, Lee.
Cheers, JP. That was a lovely intro, mate. Thanks for that.
Oh, thanks. Practiced it all yesterday. So Lee, the first thing I actually wanted to ask you, because I understand you don't actually come from construction yourself in terms of like on the tools or as a manager that's then kind of branched out to get off the tools and want to campaign around mental health. I'd love if you could give us a little bit of insight of how you find yourself today, like, really speaking to so many people in construction in particular. Like, how did you get to that journey, in the mental health space as well?
So for me, getting into that space, I got all my qualifications working in the military. So I was a civilian. And to add a bit of context to that, I became a non-army welfare worker. So that was pretty much providing therapeutic support to military personnel and their families. Okay, so people in uniform, people that were conditioned not to talk about their thoughts and their feelings, people that are there to protect and serve in that sense. And so what they found was that it was difficult for a military personnel to open for another military personnel because of the rank structure. You wasn't going to tell somebody that you were struggling. You definitely wasn't going to tell someone that was a higher rank of you that you couldn't cope, or you never had those capabilities. So what they decided to do was bring civilians in for us to then talk to them, to then find out what their issues were, and then to give them the tools and the techniques and all that sort of stuff. And I've done that for a few years, and then I moved to France, because prior to going into that environment, I tried to take my own life a couple of times. I had a mental breakdown. I had a problem with drugs and alcohol because I didn't know how to articulate my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions. And I was pretty much conditioned as a young kid to kind of keep those things to myself, which most men are, I found out later, because we just don't share, because we don't do things like that. Men like me, we don't talk about our thoughts and our feelings. And so for me, once I'd gone through all of that, I realized that I didn't have anybody that spoke my language. I didn't have anybody that looked like me or was going through the same things or was brave enough to kind of put their head above the parapet, because of stigma, shame and embarrassment, in that sense. And so when I moved to France, the biggest thing it gave me was space. I have a really overactive brain, it runs at 120 miles an hour. I'm constantly trying to keep up with myself. And moving to an environment that gave me that allowed me to start to look at me and what I needed and what I wanted to do and where I was going in life. I had the qualifications and I had the experience, but I just didn't know what I needed to do. And then I started to work out and I had to start giving myself what I needed. I had to really start working out who Lee was and what Lee wanted. And I think that's what a lot of people like me don't do. We just become, our responsibilities become our purpose, and the expectations of others become our kind of our focus, and we forget about us, we forget about us. And I wasn't hearing a lot of people talk about the stuff that I went through, in that sense. And so I started to build strength. I started to do little videos on Instagram, and it was more so I could see myself. and hear myself. So for me, it was always about giving those people a voice, and letting them people know that it's you're not on your own, because we just believe that we're all on our own and nobody understands, and people don't want to hear our problems and our issues. Person don't know what's got it worse than you to start, and that's how it was. That's that attitude, it really is. And that was it. I started talking. Talking's a powerful thing, it really is, because what I found for me was I couldn't rationalise irrational thoughts in an irrational mind. All I was doing was just looking for stuff to back up the way that I was feeling, and then you start getting on that loop. If I feel really bad, I'm going to start thinking really bad thoughts, and then I'm going to start, showing it in my behaviour. And I started to learn about me, and then I just started to pass that knowledge on through my little videos and stuff. And I didn't realise the impact it was having. I didn't realise there were so many people out there that felt like me. And that was helping me heal. It was making me realise that if I was feeling this, there was other people out there feeling the same way. And so I kind of started to tailor my coaching around that. I didn't want to go back into counselling because I was moving forward and I didn't want to keep moving backwards. And that's what you do in counselling. With coaching, it was I could be a bit more open, a bit more kind of, suggestive, and be more me and be more myself, because for 40 odd years, I was just pretending to be something for somebody else. And I was never really being Lee, or they were getting flashes of it. Whereas now, I'm 80% Lee, still fighting against the 20% that still kind of wants to people please, but I've got that kind of, I'm aware of that. And that's how it kind of worked. I started to carry on doing these videos, people will contact me, and so forth. And then I started doing things like Instagram Live, and inviting people on to talk, because I needed to start to create a community for me. Because I'm living in France in the middle of nowhere and I've got nobody. It's just me and my husband, my 2 dogs. And so I needed to create what I needed out of life. So I started to build a community, kind of based on being open and showing up as you and being accepted and not being judged. And then I started to get invited to things, so I was going back to the UK to see family, and then I was meeting people that I'd met on Instagram, because I was connecting with them as me and they were connecting with me as them, not this facade or presenting in certain ways. And then what that does is it starts to open up doors and opportunities. Someone was like, do you want to come and do this? And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come on this podcast? And I was like, yeah, cool. Because you're in it, you want to be part of it. You want to be part of this change. You really do. Because when you start learning about yourself, you want other people to learn about them. But at the same time, you don't want to force it on them. It's just kind of like, look, this is where I was. This is what I went through. This is what I was doing. This is what didn't work. This is how I'm feeling. And this is where I am now. So I thought, if I'm going to be honest with me, I need to be honest with the people that are listening as well, because I don't want to keep saying all the positive stuff, because all the bad shit's still going on. So let's just balance it out. And so I promised myself that I was going to be honest with me first, because I didn't want to be this version of myself that I created to be accepted. So I've done a lot of internal work, because I had to, because if I was changing my lifestyle and I was trying to change my mindset, I had to change the other things as well. And I had to address the issues that I was running away from. I took drugs and alcohol because I couldn't cope. But I just kidded myself it was a social thing and it was just to be out of my mates. But it wasn't. I couldn't cope. I never had the confidence or the self-esteem to deal with situations. But as I started to learn, I started to understand things that trouble me, and I understand that I process things differently to people. And I receive things differently from people and I deliver stuff differently to people, and I had to give that up. I had to be cool with that. And then I went to therapy, done some deeper work on issues I had with things like insecurities, relationships, abandonment and stuff like that, issues that I had growing up with a dad and stuff, and, the relationship that I had with my mom and stuff like that, all these play into who we are today. These are all learned behaviours. And so in order to understand who I was, I had to disentangle myself from who people made me believe that I was. And then once you start learning, you don't want to stop. Now, let me add a bit of context to that bit, is that also with learning and understanding, it presents stuff that you've been hiding from and presents stuff that you don't want to deal with. But as you learn, you start to see and you start to take the bits that you can deal with at that particular moment and addressing those. And that's kind of how I coach people, is kind of like, look, I need to know where you want to get to. And I need to understand what it is that you're prepared to sacrifice and what it is that you're prepared to let go of. Because in order to become something, you have to make room for it, which means that you have to let go of stuff. And a lot of the things that we are up until that moment is protect us, where we survive, and we don't look back and go, oh, the reason I formed this coping habit was because I used to hear my parents shouting. And I used to see that that was their way that was their way of communicating with each other. So then, therefore, in order for me to be heard, I need to shout. But that's then interpreted by the person that you're shouting at as aggression. And we go, well, why can't you understand what I'm saying to you? So you start to learn how you communicate based on how people communicated to you, in that sense. So for me, it was about coming from a different perspective. It wasn't about coming from the same way. It's like a different perspective, because it was like, okay, so what's stopping you? Why can't you do that? And it's like, well, I can't. I just can't. It's like, yeah, but why? Give me a bit more to that sentence. Why can't you? Not because I can't. Is it because you never tried? Is it because you're scared you might fail? Is it because you're not sure what's going to happen? In that sense. So you have to give them a little bit more beyond what they believe. So it allows them the chance to push against that limitation, but also push against that resistance as well. And it was all about being honest.
So do you find that it sounds like from your journey, construction almost found you rather than you finding construction.
Yeah,
Do you find like a lot of similarities in working within, speak to military personnel, speaking to professionals and in the construction industry, or is it vastly different?
There's similarities, but me personally, I would say construction's a lot more hard. There's nobody looking after you. There's nobody supporting you. It's just me, myself, and I. If you're self-employed, it's down to you. If you take a day off sick, you're not getting paid. If you can't find work, you're not getting paid. There's also that anxiety of knowing that work could dry up tomorrow and you might not have anything, and then you've got to find work because you have responsibilities. You have families. Your bills don't get paid if you don't get paid. So you're constantly on the back foot, and you're constantly hustling. Whereas in the military, everything's there for you. You just have to conform.
So did you? Because one thing that's interesting is from your journey, you almost went through this process of self-awareness, self-healing before I believe you really felt in a position to aid and coach and assist others. Do you think that is a very important thing in order for let's say a manager or owner to be able to approach the conversation and approach, let's say they want to build an organization, their construction firm, that is a very open environment for people to talk about mental health and for people to let's say not feel stigma around it. How important is it for the owner to invest in themselves in the sense of like understanding some of perhaps their own traumas or understanding their own inner kind of struggles? Do you see what I mean? Because it really feels like from what you're saying, you had to really sort of see things for yourself before you could, almost see the same things in others.
So this is what I learned very, 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 very early on in my journey through this, is that, and I learned it from my tutor, and she said to me, before you can understand the experiences of others, you have to understand your own. And that really struck a chord with me, because I was kind of like, how can I help people if I'm not even dealing with my own shit? Yeah. And I used to help people to avoid my own shit. I was the person that people came to. Don't speak to Lee, he'll know it today. Don't talk to me. So it was good. I liked that, because I could hide in plain sight and no one ever asked me about my issues. Right? Because I was always dishing out advice. So therefore people thought I had my shit together, because I presented in that way as well, but I wasn't. And so if you feel that somebody within your organization is struggling with something, remember they're a person. They're not just your employee. They're not just your work colleague, they're a person. So once they leave work, they go into their life. And we don't bring our life into work, especially men. We don't want to bring that in. We might have a moan and a bitch about what's going on, but we never go into detail. Okay, we don't give nothing away. And so if you feel that somebody's changing or somebody's going through or somebody's struggling, take them on one side and just say to them, look, I've noticed some changes in you. Are you okay? Is there anything that we can do for you? Is there anything that I can do for you? Do you want to go for a coffee? Because what you're saying is, I see you. Right? I see you as a person, not as an employee. And as a man to a man, or a woman to a woman, or whoever it is, a colleague to a colleague, I'm coming to you because I've noticed there's some differences in you. It's made me come and say to you, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? They might not take that right there and then, but what they are seeing from that is that actually maybe I can go and speak to this person, or maybe I can be a third person. But you're giving them a choice.
What kind of and it's a very broad question, but I'd love for you to give some examples of what kind of things and maybe subtle tells that somebody within your organization is maybe um let's say yeah, just going through something and maybe unconsciously even asking for help. And again, I know it's broad. It's a very broad question, but are there examples you've seen yourself, or you've heard about that maybe others can resonate with?
So you'll see changes like so. For instance, you might have somebody that comes in at the same time every day and leaves at the same time every evening, and they start to come in earlier and leaving late. If they went home for lunchtime, I'm not going home for lunch anymore. They're having lunch at work. So that then says to me, from my experience, there's stuff going on at home. He doesn't want to go home. Or if he doesn't want to go home, so just generalise that. So there's those little things. It could be someone's language in an email, someone's demeanour. They might have been quite outgoing and smiley, and you notice they've been a little bit more down, their heads dropped, the shoulders are down. Those little subtle things that we don't look for. Body language and non-verbal communication is a huge thing for us to recognise. Shifts in change, shifts in people's energies, people's attitudes, not caring or not being as engaging, or maybe being a lot more engaging. People will tell you stuff if you look for it. But the thing is if you're on a mission looking for stuff in people, you're going to start making stuff up. Do you understand what I mean? So it's just your intuition will tell you. It seems a bit like, it's the third time I've seen him go to the toilet this morning, and it's only like,
Oh,
like, is he all right? Maybe he's got whatever. It's not always a sinister thing. We always think the worst in something. It's not always a sinister thing. So for me, just quickly changing the subject, I was very, very anxious, like going to work years ago, and I used to go and hide in the toilet when my anxiety got too much. But I didn't know what my anxiety was. I didn't know what the sensations were. All I knew was my body was just kind of getting out of control, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to cope. So I'd sit in the cubicle for hours. And like my boss used to go, where you been? So I'd just been walking around the building, like chatting and that, you know what I mean? And I was like, because I didn't know how to deal with it. And then alcohol helped that, because the more I drink, the more it would alleviate those sensations and feelings of anxiety. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be a mental thing or an emotional thing, but it starts to show itself in different ways.
for I'm sure many that are listening to this as, let's say, operators and owners of businesses where maybe there's a few layers of communication between let's say site level and management, and often we can distance ourselves purposely, don't want to get too involved, don't want relationships to get personal, because sometimes you have to kind of push on project deadlines or whatever, and you want to keep that distance. But then that can often then make it difficult to then have a very, like, I'd say almost hyper personal conversation around a very sensitive topic. Is the solution to that, do you think, well, you've just got to have more like proactive engagement throughout, so if and when a tough situation like this does come up, it doesn't feel like this is, the first and only time this guy's ever spoken to me? Or is there other ways that you can kind of, let's say, like, maintain that professional distance, but when you need to go in, you can still kind of, have a channel to not feel like you're kind of overstepping the mark and stuff like that? Do you see what I mean?
If you want someone to open up to you, right, especially a man, it's all about trust. What is he going to do with this information? Where's it going? Right? Anything that we say to anybody, it's like, we know they're going to use that against us at some point because it's a weakness. I've come to you with something that I can't deal with. And I'm trusting you with this. And as soon as someone breaks that trust, everybody else from that point forward has to build trust with that person. You know what I'm saying because you're nodding your head, yeah? Right. So as a manager in those roles, what I've seen from my experience and everything I say, talk about in this podcast comes from my experience, okay, is that there is a gap. Managers and obviously you'll have employees and then you'll have self-employed, contractors and stuff like that. Right. Contractors know that they are replaceable. If you don't show up, you're not there, bang, we'll get somebody else in. Okay, so that's the fear they live with. Regardless of what they're going through, what they're experiencing, whatever challenges they have, when you get to site, you're there to do a job. If you don't turn up, I'll find somebody else. The employees have got a bit more safety, a bit more support around them because they have employee schemes and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And obviously the managers. What I found talking to all levels is if I open up to the people that work beneath me, they're not going to take my role seriously. And vice versa. I don't want to tell my manager because it could replace me. So I'm just going to keep it to myself. But then what I've also witnessed is that when we've delivered talks on sites, project manager come up and stand and go, I went through this, I went through that, I went through this. Some of the guys know this. He's being open because he's a human first. Then he's a man, then he's a project manager. So what he's done is he's taken those layers away and gone, as a man to a man, I'm saying to you, I struggled. I went through this. I had to take time off of work, right? Because I couldn't cope. But I knew that I had to do this in order to heal, in order to get through this. So I'm sharing this with you. So he built trust with him straight away because he shared. He's got nothing to lose. Nothing to lose.
Could you just go back to that? Because I've certainly heard like what you're saying, and I've experienced it myself, that if you share a level of openness to your team, it's almost like leading by example, right? How can you expect others to be open and things? But you mentioned there that there's actually some resistance, and I just want to delve into that because I hadn't heard that before. So you're saying that some owners or managers are resistant to maybe sharing because that shows a sign of weakness that their team wouldn't respect them. Is that kind of...
That's the environment we live in, mate. That's the culture, that's the attitude, which is slowly changing, but that's still how it is that we are men and we do not share. I've been in this field for a long time, but there are still things that I find difficult to share because it's still stuck to that stigma. And I'm like, when it comes to them, it's like, I do this for a living. If they think how can I go, then, in that sense. So I have to split it, I have to decompartmentalize it. So it's not my job, I can do my job. Right? I told you I can avoid. So this kind of job, this kind of role that I do allows me to do that. But at the same time, I've got people in front of me that are sharing, which then gives me the courage to then maybe face stuff that I can't face at the moment. So it's transaction. All we're doing is passing on knowledge. Right, that's all I do. I just pass on stuff that I've learned that's helped me to other people to see if it helps them. And if they then pass on it to me that works, I'm putting that in my tool bag. That's as simple as it is. But going back to what you said is that if you have a role where you've got 20 men beneath you and you're getting them to do stuff, the deadlines that keep constantly moving all the time, and the materials are not showing up, or, one trade hasn't turned up, or it's deadline, they've moved into this and they've moved into that, and all of a sudden you're noticing changes in some of these people. Sometimes you've got to look at them and go, like, look, guys, I know this is hard, right? And I understand that we're up against this, but together as a collective, we can do this, right? And then at the end, there'll be this. We just all want to be wanted, right? We all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we all want to be valued. And sometimes we're not. We're treated as everybody else, and we're not. We're all individual. We might all be painters and, we might all be electricians. That's what we have in common in regards to our professional skills and experience. But take that away, we still need to find a way to communicate as men. And that's where we struggle.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing that resonate throughout what you've been saying so far, is because kind of this recognition that there's a human behind every face, behind every name, and I really like that, in that project manager example, human, man, project manager. It's kind of like there's a hierarchy of considerations, of how to look at someone in your team. Um, I would like to kind of just stay slightly on this topic of let's say a situation where you can have identified that something is happening with a team member or an employee. You want to help, but you're not sure if the complexity of the issue is a little bit out of your depth. And let's say, you're a situation where you're not professionally trained for this kind of stuff. How can one work out whether, they should immediately refer somebody to a professional, or whether it's a topic that, is just, they just need to share, or is there not differentiation? Is it kind of, always take it every issue to a certain level and then refer to a professional? I'd love for you to give some advice of your experience of maybe someone that's done that well, and how they've made that transition to refer someone or company. I know you work for some tier one contractors as well that would maybe invest in having an in-house person or hiring someone like yourself to come in.
So we get a lot of companies that do have a welfare facility. Okay, so they have a facility where guys, girls can go talk about whatever it is that they're going through. It doesn't have to be a work thing. Okay, it could just be a person thing. And they're kind of equipped to deal with that because the welfare of their employees, their workforce, is starting to become paramount. Actually, emotionally, we need to start supporting these guys. Mentally, we've got to start supporting these guys. So what can we do better to give them the support that they need? Communicate. Communication is key. People need people, right? But the way that we kind of look at it is that if I'm here, I'm only going to deal with people on this level. But you got to work with these people as a collective, as a community to get, because you've all got the same end goal to build, to provide, right? And I say to the guys, you bring people's dreams to life. These people that go out and build houses and offices, they're there for people to use. When someone buys their very first house, someone had to make that, someone had to build it. And I think sometimes these guys forget that they're part of that process. That person, when they're sitting there for the first Christmas with their family around that house that they helped build, they've created a piece of happiness for those people. And sometimes we forget that. We just look at it as we need to get 30 houses up, these 30 units within this certain days and bang, they're gone. Sometimes we just forget. And so if, as a company, regardless of how big you are, you need to look after your workforce, which means that you need to look after their individual needs, which means that you go, you connect with them. What's going on? And I always say to them, ask them, what do you need from me? Because we try to guess and we make assumptions. He seems like, I think, I feel. I've noticed some changes in you. What do you need from me? Do you need some space? Do you need a day off? Do you need me to help you get some outside support? These are the things that I can do to help. Well, maybe you don't want to speak to me, but maybe I can help you find somebody that you feel confident speaking to. So you're letting them know that you're seeing them and you're seeing some changes in them and you're asking them, what can I do to help you?
Yeah. Most of our listenership are in the kind of, I'd say, small to medium-sized construction companies where, often there isn't necessarily an allocated budget to invest in welfare because, margins are tight, or maybe there just isn't enough management office people to kind of assist. You mentioned there, I think, one suggestion of kind of the communication piece, and I really like the kind of offering of a day off, and that would probably have something have to come from the owner. Can you kind of draw back on your experience of other things that maybe you've seen other small to medium-sized construction companies do in regards to team welfare that don't necessarily cost an arm and a leg, but are things that others could. Do you see what I mean? Take.
I can answer that question really simply for you, mate. Yeah. You signpost them to the Lighthouse Charity. Okay, that's why they're there. They're there to take that burden away from you. So if you notice changes in your staff, your colleagues, tell them that I'm going to give you this card or I'm going to give you this number. These people can help you and your families with whatever you're going through. Okay, it takes it away from work, so it gives you the time for you to focus on you and then come back to work. But signpost, that's what it's there for. If you can't afford it, that's what the charity's there for. It's there for you, signpost, but it's also there for them to use as well. Because just because they run the company or they run the business doesn't mean to say that they're immune from life. They're not. They've got pressures as well. Not only the pressure of making sure that they are providing work for their employees, but also the fact that they've got homes and families to go back to, and still.
Yeah, that's a great, because it's funny, when I was running my company, I never thought that there was a charity that would take that burden away from me, even though I kind of actively wanted to approach it. And it's only when now I've sort of stepped out and started kind of delving into this whole mental health, suicide kind of topic in construction, I started to see, especially Lighthouse, which is how we've been connected. Can you? I know you've been on tour with Lighthouse and the Make It Visible campaign. Can you give a little bit of insight into what you felt so far? Kind of what's the current dialogues that are being had in construction around these topics, and maybe also like what you've seen as maybe a change. Like, I know you've been in this space for a while, of when you first started talking in the dialogue of construction, and what you're finding in these like most recent workshops you're doing. What are the topics? What are the concerns that trades are having? I'd love for you to give an insight into that.
So when I first started doing the tour, probably about 3 years ago now, I was very, very, very anxious, and I didn't know what to expect. And what I kind of see a lot of was, maybe we don't know about mental health. We can't afford to take time off work, come and listen to this shit. That's what we would hear time and time and time again. And even from project managers and so on and so forth, do you need me there? Is it just this? How long is it going to be? I kind of, it all comes back to money, right? It's a financial thing. You said yourself, how can small companies introduce something on a very tight budget? All about money. And so if you don't feel that your employees are worth investing in, so there's going to come a point where they're not going to, they're not going to give you the best of their ability because you don't care, right? So what I've noticed is that once we deliver talks, so we go and talk about the charity, the support, the services and the facilities like that, everybody within the construction industry and their families can access for free, right? For free, totally confidential, totally anonymous. No one ever finds out that you use us, okay? We're not backed by the government either. We're backed by construction. Tier 1, small house backing companies, little people that have got 2 or 3 people employees, one-man gangs, all that. We're there to support them, okay? And it doesn't just have to be a work thing. It's physical, financial, emotional, and even legal as well. All the things that we don't know about, that we're not familiar with, that we deal with when they hit us and we go, shit, what do we do? That's what we're there for, right? We're there to provide that support service for them. But nobody knows about that. You said yourself, oh, well, I wasn't aware of that. But at the same time, you wouldn't go looking for it either, would you? You would just deal with the stuff that happened and get over it, carry in whatever it is that's attached to it with you, But when you know that there's somebody there that understands, when you're getting a guy like me, right, 6'5", Nick Grace, standing in front of you and going, I tried to kill myself twice. And then I had this massive mental breakdown and I struggle with my sexuality and I come out as gay, all these things, right? All these things. And you can see them looking at you and go, fucking hell, what are you? And at the end, they say, mate, you're really brave. And I'm like, I'm not. And they're like, yeah, you are, because I've never talked about that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? And that's a nice thing. But the best thing about it is when someone says, mate, you've got 5 minutes. You go, yeah, of course I have. And then you disappear around back in the van and you'll give this guy some space and he will tell you everything that he's been through in the last 50 years of his life. He'll cry and he will release. And then I'll ask him, what do you need from me? What do you want me to do? And he'll go, I'm good. I just need to let go of it. But thank you, because what you've done is you've given me permission. Or they might go, I think I might need some support. And I'm like, cool. Right, let me refer you in to the charity. I'll tell them the process, what to expect. So they're aware. And there's the key word, aware. I wasn't aware this support was available to me. I wasn't aware that I could access this. I wasn't aware that I could talk about this. I wasn't aware that I was feeling like this until somebody else said. And we look for people around us to guide us, don't we? You know what I mean? And sometimes we listen to the wrong things.
Would you say that the the I want to say almost the approach from both the audience and the management that are getting you in or told that you're going to come in to talk on site, has that changed in the time that you've been speaking, or is it still, are you still getting that resistance?
Yeah, of course you still get that resistance, mate. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, you're not going to make these changes overnight. You know, you understand. But you also you've got to remember is that if you have a manager that is expecting one thing and then gets something else, his expectation is to contact everybody else. All right, there's going to be the crew that are going to come around. They're going to talk about mental health. Give them 20 minutes of your time, and I want you back to work. He's giving the information that he knows with the attitude that he has in the way that he delivers that, which means he's going to be receiving, well, fucking hell, do we have to go and do this? Because that's his delivery, right? But then you'll get other managers, project managers, that go, right, guys, we got some guys coming in from this public that are going to talk about stuff that can help you. Straight away, you've got to buy in. Oh, yeah, well, how can they help us then? Right, you know, it's going to take probably 45 minutes of your time. We've laid on teas, coffees, and some buns. There's another incentive. Well, it's free food, right? Okay, so then they're there and they're kind of like, right, so I just want you guys to give these guys your attention because I guarantee you'll get some value out of it. So you're setting it up for them to engage with it already. So they want to know, they're curious. You spike their curiosity. They're like, oh, right, okay. So when they're standing there, you're still going to get those people going, I don't know if I can listen to this shit. I'll be better off going to Lane Brick. But you can see their attitude start to change because it starts to resonate. Oh, boy. Yeah, just to explain something in the way that exactly the way that I feel it. Because we're being honest, we're being open. We're saying, look, I've got to this point because my belief system told me that I shouldn't share it with anybody. I should keep it to myself. Now I'm telling
Yeah.
you, by sharing it, what it's done is it's made me realise that it's cool. It's all right. Because here I am standing in front of you guys sharing. I'm living proof.
I, I want to, so personal experience of, this was back in the day when I was working for a tier one contractor. There was often a requirement to run toolbox talks, and these would have varying levels of numbers of people attending and various subjects. And sometimes it wasn't just toolbox talks, but it was like geeing up the team because we got to get this apartment finished, or we got to push for this, or whatever it was. And one thing that was always apparent is, different people would be on site at different times, different subcontractors, and it would often only take one or two people, and actually often only one person, depending on their stature on the site and maybe even their physical appearance, to sway the entire group. And I think those owners, managers that have tried to do kind of toolbox talks and have probably experienced this as well. I'd love for your take on how one can approach that. So let's put a fictional situation where you're trying to have a conversation about mental health. And yes, you've got one guy that is saying exactly what you've been kind of saying, oh, we haven't got time for this shit. Like I'm on a price. Like I don't have time. Are you going to pay me to stand here and talk about this? How do you approach that? Do you try to single other people out? Do you try to make the group smaller? Do you try to, I don't know, like anticipate who's going to be that person and talk to them first? Like, have you got any tips or approaches that others can learn from?
It's going to be different. Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to talk you there, and I apologise for that.
No, go for it.
It's going to be different for everybody. Okay, it depends on the size of your business, and again, you're going to get those people that are going to speak louder than others. So they need to be your allies. If they're going to listen to them, rather than battling against them, use their qualities. Use the kind of sway that they have. Say, look, we're going to get these in. I've noticed some of the guys are struggling. Okay, I don't know what to do. So what I've done is I've organised this so that these guys know that these support or this facilities out there for them. So that's what you're doing. Okay, so I'm just making you aware of that. And then whatever they do, the guy, blah, 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 it's kind of like, but you know what, this is all about you guys, right? I'm doing this for you because this is something that I really believe in that's going to help. You need to get the buy-in. You know, so if he's got the bigger voice and he's the one that you're going to get the most thing from, the fact that you're going to him, look, you know, I need you to help me with this because they listen to you. So now you're making him important, okay? Because you've got a little bit of a sway here, but your whole objective is about getting all of these guys in one place at one time. It'll make them aware of what's going on. So sometimes you don't need to shout. You just need to find the person with the biggest voice to do the shouting for you.
Yeah.
And do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say there, it resonates back to what you said before, which was everybody wants to be heard. So it's kind of appealing to that person's qualities. But carry on, please
So
carry on.
also with that guy that's got the biggest voice, he might have the most to hide. What I said to you at the beginning, yeah, I was the person that people came to. So therefore my problem, yeah, but sometimes we don't have that. So what we do is we present and project. So maybe he might have issues that he can't face. So for him to master them is to become something that people recognize. So it could be. It could benefit them as well. 9 times out of 10, the people that are like that are the people that actually come up for help. And they go, you know what, mate? Because you help them melt that loss.
So that's a conversation. From what I understand, what you've said, you'd sort of ideally have beforehand. Anticipating that. But what about in a situation which I'm sure you have, because you would just turn up to the job, you don't know who's who, where as you're speaking, as you're having that discussion, you're getting those comments coming up like live. What perhaps approaches you can have there? Because I think you're already going to tell me, don't dismiss it.
No, you have to acknowledge it, because you've got to remember is the fact that that's what you're hearing. So you're hearing it, everybody else is. So if we get in those situations where people are like, it's like, look, mate, you know what? You might not want to be here. Okay. Maybe you've got no choice in that matter. But these other people want to be here. So what you're doing by raising your voice is you're spoiling it for them. So either sit there and shut up or leave. No one's making you stay. And 9 times out of 10, they'll go, it's like, well, then just leave it to the end. So you're acknowledging it and you're going, you are starting to really piss me off. However, there might be a reason. So it's kind of like that. I can see you're doing something here and I'm acknowledging that, but don't spoil it for everybody else. And what you're doing is saying to everybody else is you don't need to listen to it. Because you're acknowledging it. You're acknowledging that elephant in the room. You've got a problem. If you don't acknowledge it, it turns into an... If you've got an issue, you don't acknowledge it, it turns into a problem. Same thing. If you don't acknowledge the fact that that person's over-speaking, out-speaking, intruding, wherever you want to put it, it's going to turn into an issue. Which means he's then going to start undermining you at some point. We're talking further down the line, but you have to sometimes it's like you have to nip it in the bud. As soon as you see it, it's kind of like, well, I've noticed a difference. What is it? How can I help? What do you need? Dude, shut the fuck up. Or leave. And then he'll go, what was they talking about? It's not just the state. You would have known, but you didn't want to know. You chose to leave. Sorry, the spat then. You chose to leave. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. The delivery needs to be kind. Mate, listen, sometimes, you have to be somewhere that you don't want to be. Allow yourself to be it because you might get something from it. But you have to allow yourself to be it. And they'll be like, yeah, because it's not met with the same energy as well. If someone's being aggressive to you, your natural instinct is to be aggressive back. I've got to match that energy. But if you just go back and go, look, you know what, mate? I don't know why you're feeling this way, but this is the reason why we're doing this. So let's keep it on topic.
Yeah. I love that we managed to kind of cover this particular topic because I think there's a lot of people that would love to approach this conversation within their companies, but almost don't in anticipation of getting this kind of resistance. But I think it's so powerful because, as you said, like you only need just that one person that needs to hear that message, and you can really have a different trajectory in what, do they go to speaking to someone, or do they go back to alcohol, or do they go to drugs, or do they have other kind of destructive habits? Lee, I would like to move the conversation a little bit into yourself and your own self-care, and um you do these kind of 2 week road shows constantly speaking about mental health, construction, suicide, probably hearing a lot of stories, having to talk about your own things over and over again. I can only imagine that must be very draining, and very taxing, on your body and your mind. For others listening to this, and where it relates to them is, I think, as the owner, you can often be the guy that just all you do is hear people's problems and you're constantly solving them. You've talked about this idea of space. You've got your place in France where there's probably you and your dogs and your partner, and that's it. And you can go away with not seeing anybody else for a week if you didn't want to. For those that perhaps don't have that setup, what can you kind of relate to your own kind of habits and what you've found works, and how others that are maybe feeling kind of drained or feeling like it's too much of these conversations, how can they kind of regulate, how can they turn up the best self but also kind of recharge and stuff like that? Can you give some insight into that?
Boundaries. You have no boundaries. If you have no boundaries, then you are vacant. Because boundaries give you that protection and they show people where the line is. And if you have no line, you're open. So I found for me that I had to learn about me. So for me, my strap line is give yourself what you need. Okay, because what I need is different to you, and what you need is different to somebody else. We all try the same thing, hoping to get the same result, and it doesn't work. So it's about being aware of self. What do I need to do for me? Okay, and what we do is we neglect. We reschedule our time to fit in other things and other people. We don't make non-negotiable time that we don't shift. If we make an appointment with somebody with a dentist, we show up because it's their time. We make time for us, we move it because we're not important. Because the person we're moving it for, or the thing we're moving it for, is far more important than us. But if we have non-negotiable time, I have to put in non-negotiable time for Lee. If it means I sit and do nothing and stress that I'm not doing nothing for an hour, I have to, because my mind and my body needs that. When I stopped drinking, I needed something to fill that gap, but something that wasn't going to be destructive. So I kind of turned to yoga, and that's now become quite an integral part of my mental health and my mental well-being, because it allows me to switch off mentally for a little while. But it's also taught me techniques to deal with my anxiety. When I stand in front of these people, when I talk about stuff, I get very anxious. And I share that with them. I tell them how I'm feeling. I tell them about the sensations that are running through my body, and I tell them about what I want to do. But that allows me to take control back of that situation, but it also lets them people know that, do you know what? We're not perfect. I might be presenting as if I'm cool, but I'm not. And also there's people within that audience that feel the same way, that actually don't know what anxiety is. They're just sensations in their body and they just don't know how to deal with them.
When you talk about boundaries, do you mean boundaries from the things that are specifically, topics you need to recharge from? Or do you mean actually boundaries from everything and just like time for you, yourself, almost isolated away from all the noise? Like, can you clarify? Yeah.
All of it. So like you said, I come out and I do tours. I'm out for 2 weeks. Okay. So within those 2 weeks, we'll do probably 8 to 9 talks a week. Okay, so that's 18 talks in front of an audience that could be anywhere between 3 people and 300 or 400 people on any given talk. Okay. So over 2 weeks, I could have spoken to 1,500 people. All right. That's a lot of people to give my energy away to, but also a lot of people that I'm absorbing from as well. So at the end of those 2 weeks, I'm done. I'm mentally and I'm emotionally done. I have nothing to give. So I lock myself away for a day, okay? And I do nothing. I don't answer my phone and I just watch TV that I don't have to concentrate on because I don't have the energy. Now, I know that I'm lucky because I don't have a family and I don't have children, so I don't have them to consider, whereas other people don't. But my take from this is that I have to give myself what I need. Now, some of the guys that are on the team, they go back to their families and there's no transition time for them. because they go straight back into being dad or straight back into being mum and, all the stuff that comes with it. Do you know what I mean? But what they start to do is communicate to their partner that, you know what, it's really it. What I need is this. And they're like, okay, fine. And they work because they're communicating, which is what we encourage, talking. So I people know they go on tour, come Saturday, you don't speak to me. And I don't want to bring all that home to what? It's not his business. So I want to make sure that I've got rid of it, to myself up, given myself what I need, and then I'm ready to have to be husband and do what I need to do in that sense, show up as a coach. But I won't coach when I'm on tour because my clients don't get the best out of me because I'm tired and I'm drained, and that's doing them a disservice. So if I do book in somebody on that particular day, I always book it on the day that I know. Like it won't either be a Monday or it'll be a Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Because we dip. So those boundaries are put in there to protect me. And the same thing with my coaching as well. If I feel that maybe I'm not adding value to the person I'm coaching with, I have no problem with saying, if it's not working, maybe I can do is I can support you in this way, but maybe we need to find you a different coach because I'm doing them a disservice. So it's about knowing what boundaries to put in what places and for what reasons. There's going to be different ones for different things. Yeah, there really is.
And what would you say to, I'm sure you have this conversation several times with your coaching clients, I've got this job and then I've got to drive home and then, I've got kids and this and that, and I just don't have any time to just shut myself off because otherwise, X, Y, Z is going to happen. Are you kind of saying, look, take just carve out a minute, 2 minutes, and grow and increase it, or what's the practical kind of approach here?
So the practical kind of approach was to go and talk to your partner, talk to them. Okay, so there's a transition period between leaving work and getting home. Now, however that is, it could be in a car, on a train, in a plane, on a bike, whatever it is. That's a transition period. That's a period where you leave work and you go home. Okay, so what I encourage some of my guys to do is to use that time to distance yourself from work. So, brain dump. Okay, what do I need to do tomorrow for work? What do I need to focus on? When you're done the brain dump, you can go, right, what's important? What are the things I need to focus on first thing in the morning? Okay, so what you're doing then is you're starting to separate. Right, and then you check in with yourself. How am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling stressed and exhausted. Okay, so have I got 100% to give when I get home? No. Right, I've only got 20% to give. Okay, right, so what I need to do is make sure that 20% I can give at least 100% of that. What can I do? What can I achieve? So you're thinking about what you're actually capable of doing, rather than just walking into it and expecting it to be different and people to understand how you're feeling and what you've been through. You've not communicated that. And then when you get home, you go, well, look, you know what? How are you? How are you feeling? What percentage do you have? I've got 50%. Well, I've got 20%. What's the best way for us to figure this out? But it all comes down to communication. So you've been at work, you've brain dumped, you've worked out what you need to do tomorrow, what's the priority to you. So now you're transitioning slowly into husband and father. Okay, so how do my kids need me? How do I need to show up? Your wife, your partner, how do you need to show up today? How's your day been? So you're communicating. Yeah, it's not about you. It's about you understanding. Right, my day's been really shitty. Because normally what we do is we'll come in and go, bang. First thing that pisses us off, they get it. Because we know that they're going to accept it and they're going to forgive us. They don't make it work. So you'd have to find a way that works for you. Communication is key. It could be a text. Right, I'm going to be home in 20 minutes. I'm feeling a bit shit, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, mate, go on.
No, I love that percentage check-in thing because I have this tendency, which I think I've improved a lot, where, whether I was 20% or 70%, the answer was, yeah, I'm okay. But with the percentage, you don't necessarily have to get this good vocabulary of I'm feeling a bit this, or you can just give a number and it's a lot simpler. So I love that. And another thing that I really, really loved in what you said there is a little bit earlier, you said this idea of I'm paraphrasing here, but it's kind of like my activity that recharges me can be different to yours. And it's not about the activity, it's about finding your own activity. That's kind of what I got from that. And there's something like I'd almost say magical when you speak to somebody that knows their activity and what it is, because it's like a non-negotiable. It just happens, and I have one, and I can tell you have one. I'd love for you to speak on those that maybe listen to this thinking like it was 10, 20 years ago since I ever had any time for myself. I have no idea what, I would put me in that zone. Like, how do you find that? What is it? Do you just like cycle to try and just do lots of different things? Do you focus more on like feeling and then trying to see what activity initiates that feeling? Like, have you got any tips on how one can kind of approach that?
Yeah, I think you have to remember what makes you smile. Right? You have to. As kids, we're encouraged to be curious and use our imagination, and go off to those places we daydream. And as adults, mate, we learn to judge. That's how it changes. Okay, kids don't have any judgment. They just see what they see in the way that they see it, and they just connect with it, regardless of whether it's a little butterfly or a little flower on the ground or your little mate in nursery. As adults, when we get to that point where we have an opinion, it turns into judgment. Who do you think you are? What are you saying? Look at the state. Do you know what I mean? It's not like I see you. I have this thing now though, that everybody that I work with, I tell them how proud I am of them. We don't get told that enough, especially by our peers, especially men to men. Well, we don't get told that enough. I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud that you got up this morning, right? And I know how difficult that was for you. I know how difficult sometimes it is for me just to swing my legs over the bed and stand up. So I'm really proud of you just for coming to work today. That's acknowledgement. It doesn't have to be something big that we would consider big. It's what that person would consider big. And so, in regards to finding something, explore. You don't know until you try. But I would never have done yoga. I'd be like, I'm not being one of those tree hugging people that do stuff so that can do bendy stuff. I can't do that sort of stuff. So I talked myself out of it because I was looking at it from the way that it was, that I see it in my head. But when I went, I was like, just fix up. For 40 minutes, I didn't think about anything apart from just staying in one place. So then I started to realize the benefits that I got from it. And that's what we search for. What benefit does it offer me? What value is it going to give to me? What am I going to get out of it? How is it going to make me feel? Yoga makes me feel good, right? Balances me. And it makes me feel like I've done something for me. And it makes me feel like I've switched off long enough just to catch up with myself in that moment. And that's what I take away from it. So it's
I
what it does
I
for you and how it makes you feel.
I really, again, similar to the percentages, I love that you said like what makes me smile, because as men, typically when you hear the word feelings, it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't feel, I just shut everything off. But what makes you smile is almost like a surface thing, but actually it's the feeling is behind it. So I really, really love that. And I think a lot of people, including myself, have written it down. Um, can take even from the terminology that you're using, Lee. Um, Amazing that I feel like we've gone through this conversation and ended this on a very, like, in my view, positive space. This is a challenging topic to go through with mental health and talking about addiction and all these challenges. But I really feel energized actually about kind of where we've taken this conversation. We both highly recommend reaching out to the Lighthouse Charity if somebody needs help, and if any of the listeners have been affected, or families actually, because you added there. But is there also opportunities for those that want to have a more one-to-one approach with you, Lee, with coaching? Like, are you taking on new clients? I'd
Yeah,
love to
so
give you the space to just kind of explain a little bit about how you work one-to-one with individuals and how they can contact you.
yeah, so you can contact me from a website, which is www.leeandersoncoaching.com. There's a WhatsApp way to do that, which is easier for me. I try to make life as simple as possible. I always say have a consultation first, so we can figure out what it is that you really need in that sense. If I can help, I will. If I can't, then I'll signpost. Okay, it's not a calm, I can't do, you see you later. It's like, okay, I think this person might be better for you, or you need to go and speak to these people. So I'll give you something to go away with. I think that's very, very important. But I just want to tie this up with what you said at the beginning. It all comes down to communication. People need people, right? But we're individual. So see the people you're standing in front of and hear what they're trying to say to you, right? And if you can help them, help them. If you can't, signpost them. That's what it's all about. You know, we're not all equipped to do everything. We've all got a mouth and we've all got 2 ears. And sometimes we just want somebody to hear what we're trying to say. And the charity is there not only to help the people that work with you or work for you, but also for you as well. All right, so don't feel that you run the company, that you're not entitled to use it, because you can, because you're still a human and you still have needs.
Amazing. Lee, thank you so much for your time. I
Um,
know you're a busy guy, and you know, you're busy touring and things like that. So yeah, we'll drop all the links to everything that we've mentioned in the show notes, so guys can reach out if they need to. But thank you.
You're welcome, mate. It's nice to meet you.